VPOD.AI, your source for information. This deep dive is sponsored by Stonefly, your trusted solution provider and advisor in enterprise storage, backup, disaster recovery, hyperconverged and VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox cluster, AI servers, and public and private cloud. Check out stonefly.com or email your project requirements to sales@stonefly.com. Okay, let's unpack this. We hear so much about child prodigies, right? These kids who are just unbelievably talented from a young age. Seems like they're set for life.
Absolutely. They capture the imagination. You see them and think, wow, that's the path.
Exactly. But what if? What if that intense early focus, that head start everyone talks about, what if it's not actually the guaranteed ticket to long-term success, especially now with how fast everything changes?
That's the real question, isn't it? It's something worth digging into.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing today, trying to figure out why maybe a broader approach, different ways of thinking might actually serve us better down the line. It's kind of a fresh look at development and what success really means.
And it starts with understanding why those prodigy stories are so compelling in the first place. You see these viral videos. A 5-year-old musical genius, a 10-year-old chess master.
Oh, totally. They're amazing to watch.
And the natural reaction, especially I think for parents, or even for ourselves thinking about learning something new, is, well, that's the secret. Early, intense technical practice.
Get in early, practice hard, stay ahead. It feels like the obvious formula. You see that initial burst of skill and just assume it keeps going up and up in a straight line.
Right. But the assumption that this early specialization guarantees long-term achievement, well, that's where things get a bit more complicated. It often doesn't hold true.
Okay, so let's take a really famous example. Tiger Woods. Even if you don't follow golf, everyone knows this story. It's like the poster child for this early specialization idea in sports.
It really is. I mean, he got a putter when he was, 7 months old?
Yeah, some crazy like that.
And then he's on national TV at age 2, showing off his swing. By 3, he's talking strategy, saying he wants to beat Jack Nicklaus. And, well, he did reach the absolute top.
He did. And stories like that, they just make intuitive sense, don't they? Start super early, focus like a laser, repeat, repeat, repeat. Success seems inevitable. We apply that logic everywhere.
We do. Specific sports drills, endless scales in music, maybe math tricks in school. It feels like the quickest way to see progress.
But here's the twist, right? Human development.
Yeah.
It's rarely that neat straight line we imagine.
Exactly. Our instinct is often to go for what looks like the fastest improvement right now. But sometimes, maybe often, a slower, more meandering path actually builds a stronger foundation for the long haul. We're not always great judges of what's best for our own learning.
That makes me think about the context of where we learn. I heard about this idea of kind versus wicked learning environments. Can you break that down?
Sure. Think of it like a spectrum. On one end, you've got kind environments. These have really clear rules. Things repeat. Patterns are obvious. Tasks don't change much. And crucially, you get feedback right away, and it's accurate. Chess is a classic example. Grandmasters excel largely because they recognize thousands of patterns.
Right, pattern recognition is key there. So what's on the other end? The wicked ones.
Yeah, wicked environments are, well, they're messy. Information might be missing or unclear. The rules might change, or maybe there aren't really rules at all. Tasks are often new, things you haven't faced before. And the feedback. It can be late or wrong or just really hard to figure out what it means. A lot of modern work, honestly, leans towards this wicked end.
And you mentioned earlier that the prodigies we see, they mostly pop up in those kind environments, right?
That's a key observation. Prodigies thrive where intense early practice on repeating patterns pays off quickly and visibly. But if most of our challenges now are in these more wicked settings,
then that early and narrow focus might not be the best preparation.
it might actually be less advantageous than we think. In wicked environments, what you really need is adaptability. You need conceptual frameworks, abstract thinking.
So how do you develop that?
Often through what's called a sampling period. A time where you explore lots of different things, gain a breadth of experience before you specialize deeply. This builds that flexible foundation.
So less like crafting one perfect key, more like building a whole versatile toolkit.
Exactly. The 20th century was really about the deep specialist. But now, information is everywhere. The advantage is shifting towards people who can connect ideas across different fields. Generalists, in a way?
People who can integrate knowledge.
Yes. Big breakthroughs increasingly come from people who take an idea from one area and apply it somewhere totally unexpected.
That actually makes me think of that story about Gunpei Yokoi at Nintendo. It seems like a perfect example of this kind of thinking.
Oh, absolutely. Yokoi's story is fascinating. He didn't score well on electronics exams, apparently, so he ended up in a fairly low-level maintenance job at Nintendo back when they mainly made playing cards.
Right, not exactly a tech giant yet.
Not at all. But one day, the president saw him messing around with this little toy he'd made an extendable grabbing arm, the Ultra Hand.
And that toy, just something he made for fun, actually took off.
It became a huge hit, surprisingly. And that success got him moved into developing toys and games. Now, Yokoi knew he wasn't like a cutting-edge engineer,
Okay.
but he saw potential in technology that was already established, mature, readily available. This led to his whole philosophy: lateral thinking with withered technology.
Lateral thinking with withered technology. I like that phrase. What exactly did he mean?
Withered technology was his term for tech that was, older, well understood, cheap, easy to get, not the latest shiny thing.
Stuff everyone already knew how to use.
Exactly. And lateral thinking was about taking that established tech and applying it in a completely new context for a totally different purpose, being creative with existing tools.
And the Game Boy is the prime example of this, right? How did that work?
Well, instead of using the most advanced screen or processor available then, which would have been expensive and maybe power-hungry, he deliberately chose older, simpler, black-and-white LCD technology.
Which might seem counterintuitive for a game device.
Maybe, but because the tech was so simple and well understood, lots of programmers could easily and quickly make games for it, both inside Nintendo and outside. That huge library of games was arguably the key to the Game Boy's massive success.
Ah, so the withered tech enabled the variety and accessibility.
Precisely. And Nintendo, well, they still seem to follow that kind of thinking sometimes, leveraging proven tech in creative ways rather than always chasing the absolute cutting edge.
It really underscores that in a world that's frankly unpredictable and always changing, having that breadth, that ability to connect different ideas, that's becoming super valuable.
Without a doubt. In this kind of uncertain work landscape, people who can draw from a wide range of knowledge, who can see connections others miss, they're increasingly the ones making a difference.
Which leads to this other idea I found, which feels, well, it feels wrong at first glance. The idea that maybe having a short-term mindset is okay, or even good, especially when you're younger.
Yeah, that definitely goes against the grain, doesn't it? We're always told, set long-term goals. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years?
Right. Plan it all out. But the argument against it, particularly for younger people, is how can you possibly know? You're planning for a future self you haven't met yet, in a future world you can't predict.
It puts a lot of pressure on making the right choices early on, based on incomplete information about yourself and the world.
So the alternative thinking is, maybe don't stress so much about feeling behind, because honestly, who knows where the finish line even is?
Exactly. Instead of comparing yourself to some future ideal or to where other people are, maybe a better benchmark is just yourself yesterday.
Am I learning? Am I exploring? Am I adding something to my toolkit, even if I don't know exactly what tool I'll need later?
Right. It takes the pressure off having it all figured out and allows for more exploration and maybe discovering paths you never would have planned for.
Feels a bit more adaptable, more realistic, maybe?
It can be, yeah. It allows for that sampling period we talked about.
VPOD.AI, your source for information. This deep dive is sponsored by Stonefly.
So here's something to think about. How might these ideas of sampling, exploring broadly, and lateral thinking, connecting existing knowledge in new ways apply to your own life, your learning, your career, even if you started out very specialized?
Yeah, like what seemingly unrelated area could actually hold a key insight or a surprising solution for something you're working on right now? It's an interesting question to ponder. VPOD.AI, your source for information. This deep dive was sponsored by Stonefly, your trusted solution provider and advisor in enterprise storage, backup, disaster recovery, hyper-converged in VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox cluster, AI servers, and public and private cloud. Check out stonefly.com or email your project requirements to sales@stonefly.com.